Nothing steals our joy faster than comparison. Somebody say, nothing steals our joy faster than comparison. Mr. Jeff, nothing, Mr. Jeff, steals my joy. You're supposed to repeat after me. Faster than comparison. If you're watching online, I want you to type nothing, and I want you to put as many exclamation points after it as possible, because I need everybody to know that I'm not here to play this morning. Nothing steals our joy faster than comparison. Or to put it a different way, no thing has the power to steal our joy faster than comparison. A couple weeks ago, I took 2 girls from our little sorority to go do something they've been looking forward to doing for a long time. And on the way back, I noticed one of the girls was, kind of acting a little bit sad. And so I asked what was going on. And she said to me, I noticed that my sister was doing better than me, and that made me feel sad. You guys mind if we have a moment of truth? I know we just got started in the sermon, but show of hands if you've been there. Just quick show of hands if you've been there. Okay, that's about everybody. If you've been in that place where you felt a little something in your tum-tum because you looked over your shoulders and you noticed that somebody was doing better than you. Right? I think every one of us in the room and online can relate to that. Every one of us have been in that place where we felt a little sad, a little resentment, and we felt a little bitterness because they were doing better. Right? Because they had a nicer house. And they got the new Tesla that I've been scoping and looking at for a really, really long time. And they got the promotion. They got to go on another vacation. They got to celebrate their anniversary in an epic way. They have more numbers in their bank account than I'll ever have in my bank account. They got the boyfriend. Their kids turned out really, really well. I could go on and on and on, but I think you get the point. Every single one of us, if we are honest, we've been in that place where we look at them and they are doing better than us, and that causes us to feel a little something inside of us. She said, I feel sad because I noticed my sister was doing better than me. I'm not sure how all the other parents in the room would have responded in that situation, but when my daughter told me that, I was very careful not to pull out my soapbox. Any parent know what I'm talking about? I'm like, not this time. Normally, when your kids say stuff, and especially I'm a preacher, and so, you guys hear me once a week. My kids hear me 6 times a week, And they're like, Dad, okay, you can put the Bible on the table back now. We understand. We know what you're saying. But not this time. When she said that, I didn't pull out a soapbox. I didn't preach a sermon. I didn't do any of that because I know that feeling all too well. Right? I was very careful how I was going to respond because I've been there. I've been in that place where I looked over my shoulder and I saw people doing better than me, and it made me feel sad. 1.5 years ago, I had to, and this is a little bit embarrassing to admit, but hey, if we're going to go there, we might as well go there. I had to unfollow a ton of pastors and churches online, right, on Instagram. I'm like, nope, got to unfollow them. I made a list in my notes app on my phone to the people I unfollowed, because I'm like, maybe someday I can follow them back because these are cool people. But I literally had, and it's been 1.5 years and I haven't followed them back. So whatever that tells you about me, you can, whatever, for what's that's worth. But I had to. And the reason is because I found myself looking over my shoulder and wondering why they were doing better than me. I found myself constantly comparing myself to all these other pastors. I found myself doing what the disciples of John the Baptist did in this story that we're going to look at today in John chapter 3. Quick context for those of you who maybe aren't familiar with who John the Baptist is, or maybe you missed it a couple weeks ago. I compared John the Baptist to Little John, right? You guys know who Little John is, right? Some of you do. If you don't know, ask your kids on the way home. But Little John is one of the greatest hype men, I think people would say, of our generation. And when I think of Little John, I think of John the Baptist because in some way, John the Baptist was a hype man. He was a hype man for Jesus. The Bible says that he came to prepare the way for Jesus. And so just think like when you go to a concert, right? You go there, usually there's an MC that comes out and he gets everybody hype and he's like, who's excited? And everybody's going crazy. And then they introduce the band and then the MC walks off the stage and then the band comes on the stage. That's basically what John the Baptist's role was. That's a little bit simplified. But John the Baptist is a guy who came out and said, hey, the Messiah that you guys have been waiting for 400 years is here. And that's where we jump in the story. We jump in when John the Baptist introduces Jesus and his disciples start to freak out. Listen to this. It's amazing. It says in John 3:22, it says, after this, Jesus and his disciples went out into the Judean countryside where Jesus spent some time with them, and Jesus started to baptize people. Verse 23, it says, now John the Baptist was also baptizing at Enon near Salem, where there was plenty of water and people were coming and being baptized. This was before John was put in prison. Verse 25, it says, an argument developed between some of John's disciples and a certain Jew over the matter of ceremonial washing. I don't know if anybody remembers a few weeks ago I talked about the truth about relational conflict, and I said a lot of times, anybody remember that? Anybody online remember? These guys are, one person raised their hand, okay? Ryan remembers, but he was in the teaching meeting, so that doesn't count. Hopefully somebody else in the room, thank you, Craig, because I'm about to go just exit stage right, and just go talk to the online people. But we talked about James 4, and James 4 basically says a lot of times, James says, when we argue and we fight, right, it's not really about what we're fighting about, right? It's about something else that's going on inside of us. Well, what do you know? In this amazing narrative, these guys are arguing about baptism, but as we're about to find out, their argument really had nothing to do with baptism. It was about something deeper that was going on. Listen to what it says in verse 26, right? It says this. It says, they came to John and they said to him, Rabbi, right? I'm going to read this in the Message paraphrase. Rabbi, you know the one who was with you on the other side of the Jordan? That's Jesus, the one you authorized with your witness? Well, he's now competing with us. He's baptizing people too, and everyone is going to him instead of us. I know I've said this many times, but one of my favorite things about the Bible is how honest the Bible can be. Right? If you're like, I don't believe the Bible is real, I'm not a Bible person, you should read it just for the pure entertainment factor alone. I love that the writers of the Bible weren't afraid to air their dirty laundry. I love that they didn't edit out the things that make them look horrible. I'm not sure if you caught it or not, but there are 3 words in here that they said out loud publicly to other people, even though most of us whispered those words to ourselves when nobody's watching on the inside. Listen to what they said. It says, the one you authorized with your witness, speaking of Jesus, he's now competing with us. He's baptizing too, and everyone's going to him, and here is the 3 words, instead of us. Isn't that great? Oh man, someone's about to tell me to get off their lawn. Instead of us. Come on now, how many times have you said that to yourself on the inside? Right? They're going, why them instead of us? Right? Why they got the promotion instead of us? Why do they get all the luck instead of us? Why did they get that sweet car instead of us? Why did that happen to their kids instead of us? Why do they have a bigger platform instead of us? Why is their business doing better than our business instead of us? I think if most of us are honest, these are the things that we think on the outside, on the inside, that we're afraid to say on the outside. And I love it because the followers of John the Baptist, they don't care. They're like, we're just going to come out and say it. Why them instead of us? I love that they were honest about what they were feeling. Not so sure that I love how John responded. Listen to what John the Baptist said to them in verse 27. John said this to them in reply. A person can only receive what is given them from heaven. I know I'm up here in the capacity of a pastor and a preacher, but I'm going to put on my personal person hat for just a moment. I've been walking my way through the Gospel of John, reading it 5 verses at a time. It is phenomenal. It's amazing. I can tell you guys for sure that when I read this verse about 6 months ago, I stopped in my tracks, and this might be the most impactful, sobering verse that I have read in a really, really long time. A person, he said, can only receive what is given to them from heaven. I wish I had 3 weeks to break down what this means, but I don't. My clock says I have 30 minutes. So here's what I want to do, right? Unless you guys want to stay here for 3 hours, I can break it down. No, one person is laughing. I don't even know if that means yes. Anybody online? Thumbs up, let me know. But here's what I want to do, just to make this super practical, because we all know comparison's bad. Comparison doesn't help us. I shouldn't compare. I don't want to tell you that because you already knew that before you came in here. What I want to do this morning is I want to put some meat on the bones. I want to make this super duper practical for you. I want to take this narrative that many of us can relate to, and I want to tell you 3 ways that comparison steals your joy. Right? Because at the end of the day, that's the focus. Right? At the end of the day, I don't want you to walk out here just going, oh, it's bad for me to compare myself to other people because that's just not a good thing and God doesn't like it. Yeah, it's bad for you. Yeah, God doesn't like you. But at the end of the day, come on now, church, I need you to realize that when you compare yourself to other people and when I compare myself to other people, what's at stake is my joy and your joy. Okay, comparison, I wrote in my notes, and you may think this is weird, but I think of comparison like the monkey from Aladdin. You guys know Abu from Aladdin? You know how sneaky he was, in the marketplace, and he takes your necklace before you know it, and it's gone. You're like, oh, cute monkey. Wow, my wallet is gone. What happened? He just took the keys to my Tesla. I don't have my keys anymore. That's what comparison does. Comparison is going to sneak up on you when you don't realize it, and comparison will steal your joy. I don't know about you guys, but I don't want anybody to steal my joy. Anybody protective of their joy? Anybody want more of their joy? Okay, 5 people. The rest of you apparently can do without joy. 3 ways that comparison steals our joy. Number 1, comparison robs us of the opportunity to find joy in the sovereignty of God. A man, he says, a person can only receive what is given to them from above. You guys mind? Can I let you in on a little bit of my dark side? I was a little too quick. I wanted you to at least think about it. You're like, yeah, Pastor, preach. You promised not to leave. Shut off the stream. Come on now, I need to know. I can skip this part if y'all are gonna leave. Are you guys gonna stay? Can I let you in a little bit? Okay, thanks. Whew, feel much better. You know how I said earlier, a year and a half ago, I had to unfollow. I'm talking 20, 25 people, pastors, churches on social media. What bothered me the most is not that I was comparing myself to these people and they seemed to be doing better than me. What bothered me the most, if I'm brutally honest, is that they were doing better than me, even though I believed that I was better than them. I'll say it again because Christine asked. What bothered me, and I'll be honest with you guys, I'm not sure that I've said that ever out loud except to my wife and my life coach. And now you guys and everybody who's watching online and on demand later on YouTube. What bothered me the most wasn't just that I was looking at these other pastors and going, wow, man, they are doing better than me. No, what bothered me the most, if I am just being brutally honest with you guys, is that I'm looking at these guys and I'm going, wow, they have a bigger platform and they're doing better than me, but I feel like I am a better communicator than these guys, and that bothered me. But that's just me. What about you? Right? You ever gone that deep into your heart to ask yourself, when you compare yourself to others, what about it bothers you the most? Is it because, like me, you think you're better? Or, and this is the other side of the coin, is it because you think you're not good enough? And I don't know if you know this or not, but both things are 2 sides of the same coin. So when you compare yourself and think, man, I am better than them, and it bothers me that they're doing better than me even though I'm better than them, or you look and you go, wow, they're so much better than me, and I'll never be good enough, and that bothers me. Those are two sides of the same coin. Pastor Craig Groeschel of Life Church put it this way. He says, comparison either makes us feel superior or inferior, and neither honors God. All right, there's no neutral road with comparison. You're either going to feel superior to the people you're comparing yourself to, or you're going to feel inferior, and neither honors God. And I would argue that both rob us of the opportunity to find joy in the sovereignty of God the way John the Baptist seemed to be able to find joy. I want to read that verse to you again. John said, a person can only receive what is given to them from heaven. Here's what John is saying if you're not catching it. John is saying, hey, just so you know, the reason you have what you have and the reason they have what they have is in large part to the fact that God is sovereign. Translation, when you look over your shoulders and you see somebody that's doing better than you, who you think is undeserving, or someone you think you're better than, or you think they're better than you, that has more to do with God than you would like to believe. I'm going to say that again so you don't miss it. When you look to your left and your right or your front or your back or wherever you're looking and you compare yourself to people and you feel superior or inferior and you look at what they have has far more to do with God than you and I would like to believe. John says a person only receives what is given to them from heaven. Here's what John is saying if you're not catching it. John is saying, I just want you to know the God of the Bible is not in the business of being fair. No amens? I don't know if you know that or not. God is not fair. According to our standards of fair, the God of the Bible is not fair at all. How do I know that? I know that because he says in the Bible that he will send rain on the just and the unjust. And I'm like, really? How about rain on the just and let's send some thunder to the unjust? That sounds about fair. Right? I know that because he says in the Bible that he will bless people who don't deserve it. I'm like, what? How about you bless those who deserve it and curse everybody else? That sounds about fair. Let me give you one more. And this sounds weird as a pastor to say this, but sometimes Jesus will say stuff that bothers you. Anybody else? I'm just like, I don't like that. I know you're Jesus and I'm supposed to agree with everything you say, but that bothers me. It bothers me that Jesus told a parable in the New Testament. And Jesus says, it's a parable of the talents. He says, there was a master and he had talents. And some he gave 5, some he gave 3, and to the other one he gave 1. It bothers me because Jesus told that parable and he just kept going like it was nothing. And it bothers me that nobody called a timeout, threw a flag on the play like, whoa! Right? If I was there, I'd be like, timeout, stop. Mr. Jesus, excuse me for a second. Can you back up again? There was a man. He was giving out talents. He gave some 5. He gave some 3. And he gave, well, that doesn't make any sense. 5 plus 3 plus 1 is 9. There are 3 people. Give 3 and 3 and 3. But that's not the parable. Jesus just said, hey, he gave 5, he gave 3, and he gave 1. But wait, it gets worse than that. Not only did the guy give 5, 3, and 1, but Jesus literally says that he who has more will be given. And he who has less, the less he has will be taken from him. Does that bother anybody else? I'm like, that does not sound fair. Imagine if I did that when I get home. I'm like, Eden, Nora, Lola, woohoo! Look what I brought for all of you. You get 5, you get 3, and you get 1. The youngest one gets 5 because I know you think I'm doing it in order of age. But no, this is not a fair system. I just feel like giving the younger one 5, you get 3, and you get 1. And don't worry, your 1's going to be taken from you. If you complain, I'm going to give it to the one with 5. 20 years later, my kids are sitting with a counselor going, my daddy. He's not fair. He's kind. He's loving. He's good. He doesn't play favorites. But make no mistake about it, the God of the Bible is not in the business of being fair according to our standards. And here's the plot twist. That may be the greatest news that you hear all year. Right? The best news that you hear all year might be the news that the God of the Bible is not fair according to your standards. You know why that is? Because if the God of the Bible was fair according to your standards, you will not be here today and you would not have what you have. Okay, how many of you guys know that we are the greatest beneficiaries of God's unfairness, so to speak? Now, don't miss the point. I'm not saying that we don't have choices, and I'm not saying that you haven't worked hard to get to where you are. All I'm saying is all of our choices and all of our work makes sense when we look at it in the context of a sovereign God who is not in the business of being fair. He's in the business of being just and being good. And when you get that, it is the best news in the world, because all of a sudden you realize just how blessed you are. Can I give you maybe the clearest example I've ever seen of this? Right? This is what I always think of anytime I talk to, and I know we live in America, and America's like, yeah, I earned it all and worked it all. And it's like, okay, great, awesome, good for you. I'll never forget, and if you've been to a third, fourth world country, you know what I'm talking about. Never forget going to Haiti one year. We're driving back to the airport, and we stop, and there's this field. I think it's a rice field. And I saw this man, probably in his 80s, my guess. He looks like Thor, like jacked. Like, this is like grandpa, like just... I didn't even know you could have that many abs. I'm like, wow, that's incredible. Got bags of rice. I remember talking to some of the people we were with, and they were just giving some context, like, yeah, that guy's probably been doing that most of his life. He probably got out there at 6 a.m. and probably works 12, 14 hours in the rice field. Probably makes less than $2 a day. And I remember thinking to myself, I will never work as hard as that guy. Right? I know some of you are like, man, I'm a hard worker. I'm telling you, you will never work as hard as that guy. I don't even know who he is, but you've never worked that hard in your life, and you'll never work that hard in your life. And it doesn't matter how hard he works, right? He will never, as far as we can tell, make more than $2. And yet, here we are on this side of the world, because of where we were born, or for some of us, because of where we were lucky to immigrate to, you have opportunities that 90-something% of the world will never, ever, ever get to have. And I don't know if you know this or not, but that has nothing to do with you. Right? That was God in his sovereign grace determining that you were going to win the DNA lottery, and you were going to be born in a place where you have opportunities that most of the world will never, ever, ever get to have. And so you and I have an option. We can either continue this game where we're comparing each other to one another and looking at what they have and what we have, and is theirs better? Is it bigger? Is mine smaller? Or we can, like John the Baptist, choose to find joy in the sovereignty of God. John is saying a man can only receive what has been given to him from heaven. What I'm hoping will happen this morning before you walk out the doors or close the browser is that you realize that you have been given so much. One of the dangers of comparison is that it blinds us from how much God in his sovereignty has blessed us. It blinds us from how lucky we have been. And so John the Baptist's disciples came and they're like, instead of us. And John going, no. A person can only receive what is given to them from heaven. I know this sounds crazy, but can you imagine living life with that perspective? Imagine if we can get to the place that I'm praying this for myself as well. Well, we're not worried about who deserves or doesn't deserve what, because we know that we're the most undeserving people in the world. I mean, shouldn't Christians be if anybody's going to walk into the room and go, I don't care if God blesses someone that's unjust. I don't care if that person broke all of the rules and they got all the promotion and they got all of the blessings. I don't care, because I, for one, know that I don't deserve so much of what I've been given. So I'm not going to play that game. A man can only receive, John says, what's given to him from heaven. 3 ways that comparison steals our joy. Comparison robs us of the opportunity to find joy in the sovereignty of God. Number 2, comparison robs us of the opportunity to find joy in the success, or find joy rather in our lane. Listen to what John says in verse 28. He says, you yourself can testify that I said, I am not the Messiah, but I have been sent ahead of him. I did a tour. Are you guys tired of me talking about tours? No. Because I'm going to keep doing it. Because I like to name drop. Humble brag. Hashtag. Probably my favorite tour that I did. One of them. Skillet, Toby Mac, Lecrae. I got to MC Summer Shed Tour. I got to be, it was an outside show. We don't get to do a lot of outside shows. And I keep all of my lanyards just because it's cool and it's fun to name drop, like, whoo, check out what I did, right? But it's so interesting. You guys have heard me talk about this before. It's so interesting, especially when the tours are outside. I remember doing this show, and because it's busing outside, and I love interacting with people, and it's funny, before the show, and people come, and I'm in the crowd, and every time people see this lanyard on, they're like, hey, man, like they're like, hey, they just want to talk to you, because they're like, he has an all-access pass. He must be important, right? And they're like, yeah, you in the band? That's what they're like, are you in the band? Are you part of the band? And I always say no, except for one time. One time I was doing a show at a church. It was Newsboys. And this girl was convinced I was Michael Tate. Like, convinced. She's like, this is true story. She's like, Michael, oh, I'm such a big fan, and blah, blah. She was just going on. And I felt too bad to say I wasn't Michael. So I took a picture with her. I really did. She's like, can I get a picture? Can you sign this? I'm like, oh, yeah, sure. Come on. You know, black guy dread, same guy, you know. And so I did. I was Michael Tate for about 5 seconds. But normally, though, when people ask me that, I say no. I'm like, I'm not in the band, but I'm the MC. Right? I'm not going to get to sing a song, but I get to introduce the speakers. I'm not on the poster, but I'm on stage. I don't have a 30-minute set, but can you believe that I get 2 minutes on stage to get everybody as hyped as possible? This is not my tour, but can you believe that I have been invited to play this small, amazing part? Can you believe that I get to go backstage and hang out with these guys? Nobody knows who I am, but can you believe that I've been invited to be a part of what's going on in here? That's what John is saying. John's like, I'm not the Messiah, but I've been sent ahead of him. I'm not the Messiah, but can you believe I've been sent ahead of him? I'm not the Messiah, but can you believe that I get to introduce the Messiah? I'm not the Messiah. He says, I have told you before, but I am sent ahead of him. What John the Baptist is saying here is this. He's saying, you guys, I am too focused on what God has called me to do to worry about what God has called someone else to do. I am too focused, and I am finding so much joy in what God has given me to worry about what God has given someone else. He's saying, I'm finding so much joy in my lane to worry about what's going on in somebody else's lane. I'm not the Messiah, but wow, I have been called and sent ahead of him. You know what's so ironic about John the Baptist's disciples getting all worked up that everybody was going to Jesus and not John the Baptist? Jesus said that John the Baptist was the greatest prophet that ever lived. Just think about that. Think about all the prophets that are in the Bible, and Jesus is like, man, of all the prophets born of woman, none has been greater than John. Are you guys getting the picture? These guys got to hang out. They got access to the greatest prophet that ever lived. And they're going, oh, what's going on with them over there? What's going on instead of us, right? Like they miss that. Craig Groeschel in his book said it this way, and I thought it was just so good. He says, the fastest way to kill something special is to compare it to something else. Woo! Somebody say amen or ouch or buckets or something. The fastest way to kill something special is to compare it to something else. I know this is going to sound churchy, but could it be that the greatest danger in comparison is that it distracts us from what God is doing in our lives? Could it be that maybe the biggest lie that I've believed and that you have believed, that if I could just have what they have and if I could just be in their lane, then I will be so much happier. But the truth actually is that if you just focus on your lane and you can just take a closer look at what God has given you, then you will find joy there. Could it be that the problem is not that God is doing something special in everybody else's life and God's forgotten about you? No. Could it be that the problem is that we have let the allure of what God is doing in other people's lives distract us from the special work that God is doing in our lives? I don't know who this is for, but I just had a feeling coming here this morning that somebody needed to hear this. You don't need to be them to have joy. And you don't need to have what they have to find the joy that you are looking for. I get it. I've been there. I've given you personal examples. I know what it's like to feel a certain some way inside of you when you see people advancing ahead of you. But the truth that you and I have to keep coming back to is that there is so much joy in our lane. Don't let comparison rob you of that. Don't let comparison distract you from the special thing that God is doing in your life. Don't let comparison kill the work of God in your life. There's not only joy to be found in the sovereignty of God, but I promise you there's joy to be found in your life. There's joy to be found in your lane, and there's joy to be experienced in what God is doing in your life. If you came up on stage and we gave you a mic, or somehow we had video of what God has done in your life in the last 20 years, every single person in here, I promise, would be like, wow, that is amazing. There's joy to be found in our lane. And I wasn't really going to go here, but just so you know, I think it's interesting that the disciples were worried about what was going on with Jesus. But nobody ever stopped to consider what was going to happen to the followers of Jesus. Right? Because it always looks better on the other side. I heard a pastor say once, we always compare our behind the scenes to other people's highlight reel. Like, I wonder if the disciples of John the Baptist really knew what was going to happen to the disciples of Jesus, if they would be comparing themselves. And that's what happens most of the time, is that we're comparing ourselves to people on Instagram and people on Facebook and people at our workplace, but we have no idea what's really going on in their lives. So not only is there joy to be found in your lane, but I promise you, if you could see the full picture of the lives of the people you're comparing yourself to, you would say no thanks. Because we've all got mess and baggage in our lives. There's joy to be found in sovereignty of God and joy to be found in our lane. And here is the last one. It's maybe my favorite one. Is that comparison robs us of the opportunity to find joy in the success of others. Listen to what John says, verse 29. He says, the bride belongs to the bridegroom. The friend who attends the bridegroom waits and listens for him and is full of joy when he hears the bridegroom's voice. That joy is mine and it is now complete. I love that John the Baptist is like, I ain't letting y'all steal my joy. He's like, not only am I finding joy in God's sovereignty and what heaven has given me, and not only am I finding joy in my lane, because wow, I've been sent to set the way for the Messiah, but I have found joy in the success of others. The better Jesus does, the more joy I find. I read this last week, and it reminded me of my daughter Nora, my 6.5-year-old. I love Nora, I love all my kids, but one of my favorite things about Nora is that she is so good at celebrating the success of others. right? It's the strangest thing. I don't know where she got it from, but she's just like when it's Eden or Lola's birthday, I mean, when they open the gifts, you would think it was her birthday. She's like, wow, look what you got. That's amazing. They do this thing called Art Hub, and they all draw off YouTube, and she'll look at her sister and be like, wow, you did incredible. That's amazing. Eden had this Rubik's Cube club that she joined, and she figured out how to do one side, and Nora would not stop talking about it. She's like, wow, you are like the master of the Rubik's Cube. You are amazing. I love that about her because it reminds me every single time that there's so much joy to be found in the success of others. In a culture that celebrates the others, that celebrates the demise of others. In a culture that tells us that when others do bad, that means that when others do good, that means that we're bad. When others move forward, that means we're moving backwards. Jesus, the gospel, John the Baptist gives us a different alternative. I want to read that verse to you again. Listen to what he says. I love the comparison that he uses. He says, the bride belongs to the bridegroom. The friend who attends the bridegroom waits and listens, and he is full of joy when he hears the bridegroom's voice. That joy, he says, is mine, and it is now complete. I've said this before, but anytime I officiate weddings, my favorite part of Here Comes the Bride is not the bride coming up, even though that's like the best part of the whole thing. My favorite part when the bride's coming up is watching the guy. I love watching the big, strong guy. His bottom lip starts to quiver. His knees start to shake a little bit, And they're trying so hard to hold it together. And their forehead's red and tears are coming down. And they're just like, oh, I love that. I love just seeing the joy in their face when their bride's coming up. And that's what John the Baptist is saying. He's saying, no, you're comparing. This is my joy. He says, Jesus doing great is my joy. There is joy to be found in his success. There's joy to be found in the success of others. I don't know about you guys, but this is the kind of community I want to be a part of. This is the kind of community I want us to build. This is the kind of person I want to be. I want to be the kind of person whose default response to people's success is to celebrate them. I mean, can you imagine that world? Can you imagine a world where when you get on social media and you're scrolling and you're like, wow, they just went on their 79th vacation since January. Wow, that's amazing. I'm just going to like it. I'm going to share it. I'm going to cheer for them. I'm going to text them and go, woo, I hope you go on your 80th vacation before I get to go on my first. I mean, it sounds crazy, but that's what the gospel does. When we realize that we've been blessed by the sovereignty of God, when we're focused on our lane, we have margin to celebrate other people. That we get to champion other people in our field. Imagine being that free. Right? That's what I'm praying God does in my heart. That God will get me to a place where I can find joy in the success of others. Because it's one thing for me to come and say, hey, Dr. Michele, man, I heard you're killing it at your work, man. I'm just so excited for you. That's different. He's a pharmacist, I'm a pastor. It's another thing for me to go, hey, Pastor Micah, Five Lakes, man, you guys have rebounded like crazy. It's like COVID never happened in your church. It's like, wow, I'm looking at social media and you guys are slaying it. And I just want you to know that I am so excited for you and I'm praying for you and I'm cheering you on. And if you need anything, you let me know. Sounds crazy, I know, but how freeing is that? Can you imagine being so free that you're not threatened by the success of other people? Imagine being so free that when that person rolls up in a nicer car, you're like, wow, man, can you give me for a ride? Can we drive around the parking lot? I'm just so excited. Man, your kids are doing awesome. Your kid got that scholarship. That thing worked out for you. You got a ring. Wow, that's amazing. I am going to celebrate you. I am going to champion you. Imagine being that free. I want to be that free. Anybody else? Anybody else want that kind of freedom? The good news this morning, maybe the best news, is that we can practice our way into that freedom. And I don't know about you, a lot of times when I come to church, I hear something like this. I'm like, all right, pastor, lay hands on me. Let's pray. Let's do a song. And maybe God will do some woohoo. And then I'll feel like, yeah, wow, I feel something different. I hate to break it to you, but I ain't got no special prayer for you. But here's what I have for you. Believe it or not, you can practice your way into that lifestyle. In other words, you don't have to feel it to do it. But if you do it long enough, you'll start to feel it. Remember what I'm talking about? Right? You don't have to feel like my daughter Nora to act like Nora does, but if you act like her and choose to do that long enough, you will start to feel it. I heard a pastor say once that the fastest way to kill comparison and envy is to publicly celebrate the object of our envy. So instead of us, and we're not gonna, I know they're playing beautiful music behind me, but I told our team, I'm like, nah, we're not gonna do a response song today. I love response songs, but come on now, sometimes, how many of you know, it's easy for us to hide behind the response song. It's easy for us to over-spiritualize the conversation, and we're not gonna do that this morning. This morning, I wanna make it a little bit more practical than that. I wanna give you 3 questions to ask yourself, 3 steps to finding your joy. And I'm going to give you a few minutes to wrestle with each of these, and then I'll come back and close, and we'll be out of here. If you got a phone or you got a pen, you may want to write this down. I want you to not only think about it right now, but I want you to try and put this into practice all week. So here's the first question. I want you to identify one big way that God has unfairly blessed you even though you didn't deserve it. Right? We're so good at looking at other people like, they didn't deserve the promotion. Didn't deserve that. I don't know if she deserved that guy. I don't know if he deserved that girl. I don't know. We're so good at that. And I want us this week to just take a minute and just say, God, what is one way that you know you didn't deserve it? You know God didn't give it to you because you kept all of the rules. You know that in spite of the fact that you are undeserving and you're not worthy, God chose to bless you. What is one big way that God did that? Number 2, I want you to identify, and we'll throw all these at the very end. I want you to identify 2 things that are uniquely special about your life and your lane. Again, we're so good at seeing the special things that we wish we had that other people had, but I'm telling you, everybody in the room, everybody who's watching, there are some special, unique things about your life. I don't need to know you to know that, because I know God, and He says He knows the number of hair on your heads. He has a plan for your life. He saw you before you were born. He loves you more than you can ever imagine. There are amazing things going on in your life. So not only do I want you to think of one way that God's blessed you, I want you to think of 2 things that are uniquely special about your life and your lane, and celebrate that. And last but not least, I want you to identify 3 people in your industry, in your field, in your season of life, etc., whose success you can publicly celebrate this week. This is the hardest one. To just say, I'm not going to wait for God to magically change my heart. I'm not going to wait for some special prayer. No. I'm going to step into that freedom. Right? The fastest way to kill envy and comparison is what? To publicly celebrate the object of your envy. So this week, I want you to think, who are 3 people in my field, in my season of life, that I've been comparing myself to, and I think I'm superior or I'm inferior, and I'm going to celebrate them publicly. I'm going to cheer them on, and I may not mean it. I may mean the opposite inside my heart, but I'm going to do it, and I'm going to practice my way into freedom. It's a long process, but it works. I've been doing it for a year now. I told you guys I unfollowed all of those people, but I've been trying to do this for a year now, to just say, anytime I see somebody do something really good that I wish would have happened to me, I'm just going to champion them. I'm going to like it. I'm going to comment. I'm going to say, woo! Right? On the inside, I might be like, boo, but on the outside, woo! And every time I do that, I'm going to pray, God, will you give me that freedom? Will you help me find, God, will you help me find the kind of freedom that John the Baptist found? That joy, he said, is mine, and it is complete. Comparison robs us of the opportunity to find joy in the sovereignty of God, joy in our lane, and joy in the success of others. Today is an invitation into joy.